Yes, welcome to the No State Project. I'm Marc Stevens, author of Government Indicted, which you can get at markstevens.net. Glad to be with you for this episode 31 of the No State Project, live commercial-free here on Wednesdays. And I'm pretty certain that next Wednesday we will have the live show, this streaming show. We will have it in HD on YouTube, on my No State Project YouTube channel. So with all the tech issues that I've had, that I've been plagued with on the show, last week was another good example. I just decided, you know what? Let me make sure before I have a scheduled show that everything is working right. I've had this issue in the past where for some reason I can't run the show, the caller line. I can't run that on the same computer like I'm doing now. There's a horrible static that comes in when I loop the audio back through the mixing board, or from the mixing board back into the computer. So this is what we got today, but we will have the HD video available, of course. We'll have the MP3 available right after the show, and then we'll get the HD video up by tomorrow, hopefully, or Friday morning. So if you do want to call in, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with that there pound sign. So 2020 and the pound sign. If you want to join me on Skype, please instant message me first at Frank Rizzo 3. That's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. So I do have to thank everybody, especially at least in the live stream. You can see this part of the computer. Matthew from Down Under, I appreciate it, mate. I mean, this thing screams. I got the last video rendered in a quarter of the time. Usually a 1 hour HD video is going to take upwards of 4 hours to do. It's like a 4-to-1 ratio. Under an hour, so a 720 HD. Well, actually, yes, I think it was it was a 1080 HD that was an hour long. Took less than an hour to actually render. So I can't thank you enough, mate. I really do appreciate that. And of course, Calvin for putting that together. And I appreciate Eyal and everyone who does continue to support the show. I do appreciate that. I am using Instagram now, though I don't have a phone, so I can't really post because I can't size the pictures. So I'm going to have to transfer it to a phone first, and then from a phone upload, so I'll get those pictures up there. And I will be using, thanks to Calvin, I'm finally doing it. I am actually using Twitter a lot more, so you can reach me at Twitter at it's No State Project, and the Instagram is the Marc Stevens, and it's underscore. It's the underscore. You get the point. So next week will be the HD live stream, but you know I'm kind of torn with that. I mean I want to do that, but I still want to have the graphics that we put up on the video, which seem to be, just to help more with the educational aspect of the show, because we got a lot of stuff to cover. Hopefully, Jeremy is going to give me a call, but I do want to point out that I actually did a live, less than a minute live video on Facebook today just to announce the show, and that we do have a new dismissal, a withdrawal from a prosecutor that we'll get to. Hopefully that Jeremy will call about that and he can give us a report on that. But I made the mistake of actually posting something on Facebook, and it went against my better judgment, but for some reason in my feed I get some of the most hateful people that you can imagine. I don't get it. I have to unfollow a lot of people. And someone had ranted about veganism. Well, not about veganism, but how much he hates vegans. And so there was something from last year regarding, I guess it was, they had made a vegan brisket, and of course it wasn't made with meat. No animals had to die for the meal. And so I'm assuming that they used seitan or tempeh, something like a wheat meat, which is awesome. And this really seemed to torque this individual. And of course, everyone starts pigpiling on the vegans. So this wasn't cancer-inducing enough to look at this thread. And like, you do realize that we're not, because they're saying vegans are lying, that you really do want meat, but you won't eat it. No, we don't want meat. Because animal flesh, if you take the ethics completely off the table, Animal flesh is really, really bad for you. Some of us are concerned for our health. That's why vegans as a population, as a group, compared to vegetarians and, of course, meat eaters, have the lowest BMI. They have a healthy BMI. In fact, they're the only group that has a healthy BMI. That's why you rarely see fat vegans. Yes, there are fat vegans out there, especially if they've just become a vegan from after eating meat for their whole lives. But generally, vegans are much, much leaner. So I like the line from, what was that movie, Ice Age. Yeah, no, it's really hard to get fat on a vegan diet. It's not. I'm not fat. It's all this fur. Makes me poofy. You got fat fur. See, I would have played that, but then I would have had to edit that out. So if I had played the actual audio, I can't do that anymore. It's not worth going and doing all the editing that I have to do to cut all that stuff out so I don't get a hit on, for copyright. So I went against my better judgment, and I actually posted. All I did was ask a question, and immediately people most of them the crap storm starts. And so I just asked a question for all you non-vegans that hate vegans and just have to post how much you hate vegans. Are you okay with torturing or hurting animals? Basically like kicking an animal or actually torturing it, putting it in a windowless and cell where it can't even turn around. And are you okay with hurting animals? You can't even get a straight answer. Someone's accusing me that I have a false equivalency fallacy. I wasn't equating just hurting to torture, but it wasn't even that. So I just couldn't believe all the crap. So just do me a favor. I should never post on Facebook ever again. I should just do the promotion of the show and just completely not do that. That is the best way to go. That's how you can avoid getting cancer from these, because it's almost as bad as YouTube comments. It's just terrible. Because to me, it really, and I was set straight a couple of years ago. Now it's been 2 years by Eyal, who does No State Project Israel. It's just a matter of being ethically or morally consistent. If we believe in do no harm, it doesn't matter if who we're attacking or who we're hurting is a moral agent or not. It's our ethic that we're living by. And just because someone can't conceptualize the concept, it doesn't make it okay to hurt somebody. Let's say somebody with Down syndrome, someone who doesn't have the mental capacity to conceptualize ethics. Well, they're not a moral actor. Well, it's okay to kill and eat them then? No, it's about moral and ethical consistency. If you're not okay with walking up and just kicking a dog, then it logically follows that you can't be okay with slitting that dog's throat and eating him, or a pig or something like that. So if you would recoil in horror that somebody walked up with a baseball bat and just started hitting a cat or hitting a pig, if that is wrong to you, and anyone who's not a psychopath or a sociopath, I would imagine that's wrong, then it's wrong to kill them. So I like this guy comes out and says, well, there's a lot of omnivores that love the animals and to feel compassion and love them and love their life. If you love animals, you don't kill and eat them. You cannot have any respect for their life if you're okay with taking that life. It's amazing this logic was lost on me for so long. Well, we all have our bias. We all have, especially, confirmation bias. We all have our conditioning, and sometimes it just takes someone to call you on a live broadcast and set your butt straight. But to me, it's as simple as it gets. If you're not okay with kicking a dog or just walking up and kicking a cow or punching it, then it logically follows. And to be logically consistent, you don't kill and eat them. And that's what we talk about here on the show. The reason why we're anarchists is because we talk about moral and ethical consistency. If it is wrong for me to force a stranger to give me money, it's wrong for everybody. And just calling myself a government, calling myself the state, doesn't make the act any less immoral. That's what we want as anarchists or voluntarists. We want the principle of do no harm and that aggression is wrong. We want that applied across the board. We want that rule to apply to everybody. Moral, logical consistency. That doesn't mean we're perfect. I'm using the internet. Yes, to maintain this, I have to pay a federal tax. So, but it's about being as morally consistent as we can and or as ethically consistent as we can. And that's where we oppose the concept of a ruling class because it violates certain principles. And like I wrote in Government Indicted, it's really easy to bring out the contradiction and debunk the concept of government itself or the concept of states, cities and whatnot. Because at least in the United States, the ends conflict with the means. There's a contradiction there. They're supposed to be protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, of life, liberty, and property. And yet, the means to do that violates your life, liberty, and property, or violates your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's a contradiction. You want to get rid of that contradiction, you got to change the manner in which the services are provided, the protection of life, liberty, and property. Change that so it doesn't contradict, and hey, we've got some social evolution going on. We're pulling out of the damn Dark Ages, medieval times. Hey, you think it's that simple? And something I came, with that when I was doing some work the other day. We'll talk about this more later because I want to get to the calls. If your position starts from an assumption, chances are you're not able to prove your ultimate conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. So if the foundation of your claim is an assumption, then it doesn't seem likely you can prove your ultimate conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt, right? I mean, if you start with an assumption, or how do you get to beyond a reasonable doubt? And this is something that we bring up with these prosecutors and these tax agents, which I had a hell of a call with the tax agent. We'll get to if we have the time. They had a hell of a 3 calls with the Franchise Tax Board this week. Oh, wait, was it Friday? It might have actually been Friday. Yeah, maybe it was Friday. So what it is that prosecutors and judges, well, kind of the same thing. It would have you believe that they can prove that you violated their code beyond a reasonable doubt by first assuming that the laws apply in the first place. So imagine that. Yeah, right? Hey, let me tell you about my position. Hey, hear me out. Give me a chance. Hear me out. I'm going to prove you violated my rules beyond a reasonable doubt. How are you going to do that? I'm going to first assume that my rules apply to you. Come on, give me a break. You're going to prove that I violated your rules beyond a reasonable doubt by assuming that they apply in the first place? That's not how honest people do business. That's not how people with ethics and morals operate, at least when they're being consistent. So I want to get to the calls. We have area code 404. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Marc, it's Jeremy. I'm in Atlanta.
Jeremy, I'm glad to hear from you.
I was sitting here trying to sign up to this Ustream. This is my first time I joined in a long time.
Well, I haven't actually done that. I can't actually see. So if anyone's sending comments to the Ustream page, I can't actually see them. So if you want to make comments, and this is not just for you, but if you want to make comments, it's best to send it to me on Skype at FrankRizzle3.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, there are some, but not any comments. Nothing recently, I guess.
Okay, so you've got some big news for us.
I do. See, it was February 8th, 2016. I was pulled over in Sandy Springs, Georgia, with my own tag, which said traveling, not driving, not for hire, private, non-commercial use only. Basically, it was kind of the perspective of the law side.
Right.
And it wasn't until after I was pulled over and they took my car and I walked home. It was only about a mile from my house. And, I'd been driving around with no insurance and my personal tag for 3 months. There had been a couple different times where cops would get behind me, but they just wouldn't pull me over. So at that point, I was like, well, I just can't get them to pull me over. Well, this one did, and he took the car, and I got 2 citations. And I didn't go to jail because I presented my driver's license, which I won't go into all the nitty-gritty details. Where I'm going with this is that eventually I realized by just searching the net and looking at all kinds of things during the 2 days when I didn't have a car and seeing, actually your approach or the approach that's on your website of addressing the facts instead of the law, since the law they could interpret, not rightfully, but they could interpret it different in different courts, but the facts, it seemed to be a simpler approach and a more logical approach. So that's what I went with. I got 2 of your motions about 6 weeks after I was pulled over. Well, let me back up a little bit. I actually ended up paying to get my car out, getting the insurance and getting a tag just so I could get my car out of the impound, because they got this, conspiracy going on with the tow company where the tow company has agreed not to give me anything back until I've proven that I have these items. Anyway,
it's kind of real quick. It's kind of odd that they've done that, because at least I hear, I've brought a tow truck with me, or I brought another car or a truck with me so I could tow my car home so I could get around that, so it wasn't actually going to be driven on a public highway. Now, I don't know if they allow that out there, but I would throw that out to anybody. It may be worth the expense depending on your situation. If you've got somebody that can just hook it up and tow it out of there, then you can avoid that crap.
Right. Yeah. There's a couple other, ideas I have to try next time too. But long story short, I was in court 6 weeks later at plea and arraignment. I had already submitted your motions, more than a week before, and copied everybody I needed to copy on them. I went into the court early and asked the clerk, hey, I want these motions to be in front of the judge. I don't want to get in front of the judge and him or her say, I never saw any motions. He said, listen, they'll be there. So everybody else, there was probably 130 people there that day. Everybody else stood up and made a plea, and I was the only one that said, I basically went in with I have an unsigned plea of guilty, which I did, and I just have a few points for clarification, questions where I need to be clear on. And she goes, fine, well, we'll save you for last.
That is such I got to say right off the bat, the fact that they have got to waste hours of your time because basically it comes down to they don't want anybody else to hear that you can actually challenge. You don't have to just pay or go hire an attorney.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it ended up, I think the unsigned plea of guilty, angle worked because they actually called me up first. So, I got to go up there and present awesome questions, and I was in the chat for a few nights, practicing with the people there. So I got a lot of great stuff, and I think I bought something from you that is like a walkthrough of, what to say if they say this and that, the whole chart, and it was great. I went up there and I got to answer great questions, and when I asked the main question of, has the prosecutor submitted any evidence that the codes I violated apply to me just because I'm in Georgia? And she goes, whoa. And, this has been, 15 months ago or so. It was last March. This is the city court, the first. This is, yeah. So this is a while back, but as best I can remember, I said, and there was something on the paper about, the Supreme Court has ruled consistently that once jurisdiction is challenged, it can be challenged at any time, and once it is, it's got to be addressed. When I said that, she said, you didn't challenge jurisdiction. I said, you didn't get my motion? She goes, no, I didn't. Okay, and I said, well, I specifically came in early to tell the clerk to give you the motions. He said he would. Don't worry about it. You don't have them. She said, okay, well, go back out to the clerk and get them right now. So I went to the clerk. I said, dude, really? I came in early specifically so this wouldn't happen. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to do it right now. So I went back into the courtroom, and I saw him coming in and hand it to the judge. And within 5 minutes, an officer came to me with a piece of paper that said, notice of rescheduling. They just needed me to sign and say, we want to reschedule this for 5 weeks later. And I figured I would do that because at that time I was like, well, maybe I need to practice some more on how to, I felt like I wasn't 100%. I was only probably 70% on knowing how to reply to different angles they might go into. But I didn't even need to do any of that because I called the court clerk 2 or 3 days later, and they said, everything's canceled. I said, you mean the whole case has been canceled? Well, it's been bound over to the state. I said, well, I didn't authorize that. And she said, well, yes, you did. I have your signature right here. I said, well, I have a copy of what I signed, and what I signed was reschedule. And she goes, no, I have that you signed to bound it over. I was like, no, I live 2 miles from you. I can just come up there. I know you're lying. And she eventually said, well, we have your signature, whatever that means. So I just went with it. Okay. She goes, the Fulton County State Court has 2 years to mail you something in the mail notifying you. If you don't mail you within 2 years, everything is just voided and canceled or dismissed or whatever. So I saw after a year passed, I thought, well, surely I won't get anything, right? Well, this mid-May, I did. Got a notice to whatever they call a calendar, scheduling of calendar. So let me open the file up here.
I was just going to say they don't have to, and don't call me Shirley, but I kind of lost my opportunity to get that in timely. But don't bump. Okay, no one got it. Don't worry about it. So you get this notification.
Get the notification in mid-May. It's for mid-June. Of course, I redo the motions that I had in the city court. I restyle them for the state court. Send them to the solicitor. No response, nothing. Nothing was submitted in response to them.
Well, sure. I want to point out that, one second, Jeremy. I just wanted to point out that when they, for you in the future or anyone else hearing, when they want to give, when they want to do something like that, I would object. I say, well, I object. If the prosecution doesn't have the evidence and it's not in the record right now, then why don't you dismiss it, and then you can give the prosecution 5 weeks to provide the evidence, and if they don't, then then it should be dismissed, with prejudice. So that's what I would say. Look, either the prosecution has the evidence in the file or they don't, and if they don't, there's no reason to reschedule this. You have to dismiss it. So that's why we're always
I should have done that.
Always jumping on that. So at the very least, no. Why don't you dismiss it and give the prosecution 5 weeks to correct the record, if in fact they can do that, which of course we know they can't do that.
Right.
Okay, so where were you?
And if I wouldn't have signed the reschedule, I at least should have said, hey, what if I don't sign this? Then instead of just signing it. But at the time, I feel like I'm a lot more, a little bit more experienced and learned now, or however you would say it. And next time I'll definitely go down that road. But I didn't end up having to do a whole lot in the state court. I went to the plea and arraignment, and the solicitor talked to me and said, oh, you submitted motions. You didn't even really need to come today. I said, so I don't have to enter a plea? Nope. Which, I've heard people on the chat and saying how that could be. Anyway, in the court that I was in, they didn't pressure me at all in any way to enter a plea. They didn't even really ask me. They said, do you have motions? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, you shouldn't have come. You should just, we rule on motions at the, whatever they call it, pretrial, I guess. I don't know.
Well, they're supposed to have a motion day, but yeah, I guess they can do it at pretrial.
Yeah, so I went into the pretrial Monday morning, 2 days ago. I hadn't entered a plea or anything, and I didn't even end up doing anything except for when they called my name after about 40 minutes, I stood up, and instead of saying here and sitting back down, I said, I am here by special appearance in order to challenge jurisdiction. And the judge's eyes lit up, or not lit up, but his eyebrows kind of went up, like he was shocked to hear that. The prosecutors turned around, and they were kind of surprised, and everybody kind of got real quiet, because there was some chatter going on, but all that stopped when I said that. It was like I said something that, like, ooh, he's challenging the jurisdiction of the court. And the judge said, okay, we'll deal with that.
Okay, but I just want to jump in here real quick about that. I just want to point out that since what they accused you of is criminal, I have the document that you sent to me. Special appearances aren't even recognized in a criminal proceeding. It's only for a civil proceeding. So you want to make sure that, yes, you're there objecting.
Really?
Yeah, you're objecting, and you're not appearing. You're not even doing a special, but you are not appearing. You are participating on a threat, duress, and coercion simply to challenge jurisdiction to defend yourself against further abuse. But you want to keep it straight, because they could have just used that against you and try to make you look bad by saying, sir, obviously because you're not a lawyer, you don't understand the proceedings. There is no such thing as a special appearance in a criminal proceeding. You've got that confused. So they can use that to kind of gaslight you and make you think, well, what else did I get wrong? So I want everyone to remember that. You are participating on a threat, duress, and coercion to avoid further violence. And you're there specifically to challenge the prosecution's allegation at this jurisdiction.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I was just thinking, okay, I knew if you technically appear, or I'd heard or believed that when you appear, you're in some way maybe void, saying the jurisdiction applies to me, okay, and I can no longer challenge it if I'm appearing. That's why I want to make sure.
Right, because
appearing. So you're saying it's only civil that you can do a special appearance.
Yeah.
It actually seemed like the prosecutor later told me when I was signing the paper that, oh, you're the one making a special appearance? So I said, yeah. He said, okay. And so, I mean, I don't know if he knows what you just said either.
He probably doesn't.
He didn't let on.
I mean, you see, and the point is you're not actually appearing, because appearing is a word of art. It's a technical word. It doesn't just mean that you're there physically. It means something. So if they are going to try to take it that you're appearing and you're waiving personam jurisdiction challenge, then that's why we go through and say what we do. We are challenging all aspects of however however the prosecution's saying you have jurisdiction, we're challenging it because it's baseless and has no evidence. So
I could have just said, I'm here for the sole purpose of challenging jurisdiction, and that would have taken care of the whole.
Yeah, I like to be specific. It is in the paperwork that you're not appearing, that you're only participating on the threat, duress, and coercion to avoid further violence being done to you by way of a warrant, for example. And yes, you're there to challenge the prosecution's allegations of jurisdiction.
Right. Okay, I'm seeing that now. I'm just looking back at it. Now, if that's in the motion, that's okay, but I need to also, if I would have just stood up and said, oh, I'm here, and sat down, but then in the motion itself, it says something, by special appearance, not submitting to the court's jurisdiction, participating in the threat, duress, coercion, etc. Is it, I always kind of wonder how that works. It's in the motion, but I didn't, in real time, I didn't act out.
Well, fortunately, it worked out pretty well. So why don't you give us some of the
details? It worked out excellently.
Yeah. So what happened?
Well, that was about 10:10. I sat there for about 3 hours and 10 minutes, and during that time, a couple of people around me, I got to share your information with them. They were asking me questions about what I was doing, and I said, yeah, check out markstevens.net. But another guy in front of me leaned back and said, "Hey, man, I heard him say they're going to save you till the end." So in both courts, they had threatened.
Yeah.
And in this court, they did save me to the end. I mean, I was in the last group of like 10 or 15 people left in there, and they finally called me. Matter of fact, 10 and 15, they tried to weed that down like 3 or 4 different times before they finally, because I kept raising my hand. They go, "Is there anybody in here who is not being represented by a lawyer and hasn't talked to a prosecutor?" I mean, they kept, because they wanted everybody else to leave.
Yeah, this is such a wait. I mean, I've already given away the end. The thing is, this is such a douche move because they already knew there wasn't going to. They could have let you go hours before.
It gets worse. It gets better and worse.
Okay.
Better for me, but it gets more lame. So he asked me my case number. I looked down at my paperwork and read it off. He being the prosecutor. There was a fill-in prosecutor, actually. The actual guy wasn't there. It was an assistant that was filling in for him that day. He said, "I just don't have your file." He called me up and said, "I just don't have a file we want to dismiss." I said, "You mean you just want to dismiss because you can't find the file?" Really, I'm not even sure what would be in the file. I mean, literally the only thing on the whole case was my 2 motions. That's it. Like, there's nothing else there. And, of course they have the 2 accusations that they've made. One, that I didn't have insurance. One, that I didn't have a tag. And thus registration. So I just signed right there. Yeah, I agreed to dismiss it. He said, "Do you have any?" I see. Let me look at your ticket. Oh, okay, so you didn't have insurance, you don't have a tag. I assume you got those now. I said, "No, I don't." He goes, "Well, that's okay. We don't care. We still want to dismiss the whole thing." And I said, "Okay." So I just signed the paperwork Monday. I went to pick it up Tuesday, and that's that.
Yeah, they could have let you out 3-4 hours before. It would have been nice for them not to waste, half your day that way. But hey, congrats. That's fantastic. I would do the. Should I do a victory screech?
Victory screech!
Well deserved. So congratulations. I think it's great. And I had to ask you about the getting those things in the email because there are times people don't give me all the information and then I post it. And so I'm doing a better job on my end of investigating to make sure so that while you did have the registration and whatnot, they asked you if you had gotten all that and you told them no. So they still dismissed.
I told him no. I literally said no, straight up immediately. And because here's my thing. I wanted them to answer that main question. Like you don't have any evidence.
Right.
Like I really thought we were going to go there, but no, they didn't want anything to do with it, man. They wanted to get me out of there.
Yeah, and so at no point, just to be clear, you never got a response in writing to the motion. They never gave you anything.
No. And I went to the courthouse 3 different times to check. I called once and I went down there twice to check, and nothing.
And while you were there, they just wanted to dismiss. They did not even try to overcome the motion and say, "Sir, you're out of your mind. Of course, the laws apply to you because we got XYZ as evidence."
No, nothing at all. But what I just told you in the story happened. Like I literally sat there for 3 hours or so, and then once everybody was gone, most people were gone. They called me up there and said, "We're dismissing you." And he said we would have misplaced your file. And I mean, that's just not true. And even if it is true, they could reprint it. And even if they couldn't reprint it, there's nothing in it. Like what is in it?
Well, all that's going to be in it is going to be, especially for this, there's going to be the ticket from the police officer, which is also now electronic record. The police officer is still going to have a copy of it. So, look, I know some people would say, well, look, this was just too much trouble. Everyone else that let's just look at the evidence that we have available to us. Everybody else was just pleading guilty and paying, right? Was anybody else going to trial that you saw that day?
Very, very few people in there, and there was probably about, I'd say, 120 people there.
Holy now out of that percentage that went to trial, or that will get supposedly scheduled for trial, how many of those do you know of that were dismissed?
None.
You were there for a while,
None that I know of.
but you didn't see anybody go to trial or want to go to trial, and they.
I saw a bunch of people get their court fees waived, and they went out smiling and all happy, and I'm thinking, you just wasted how much on a lawyer and all your time and who knows what else. I mean, yeah. The guy sitting beside me, who I hopefully he'll look at your site. I gave him the information. He seemed really interested in it. So he had spent so much on a lawyer and the DUI and blah, 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 but nobody was harmed or injured, and I was just telling him.
Well, it's still a DUI.
What do you think, Mark, about the whole kind of common law? The court gains jurisdiction when there's harm or injury, and since there's no harm or injury, there's no crime. I mean, how is that 100% true? Or
well, that's their
what
law.
Makes sense to me.
That's their law. If you look, and I have the standing cross-reference, it's actually in the motion to dismiss. That's their law. It's injuria et damnum. There has to be injury and damage. The violation of a legal right that results in damage, and the court has to be able to redress the injury. So that is true. However, I don't want to anyone to think that just because someone is hurt, and this is an issue I've had with somebody who's on the chat, and he's been on the show before, I think Shelby. You have to have evidence that a written instrument from 200 years ago actually applies to everybody in a certain geographical location. You have to have evidence of citizens and a body politic for the court to have jurisdiction, because you have to prove that there's a state and that there's a government. Because if not, all you have are men and women that are forcing people in the area to pay them. And who are they? They're just a violent third party who's trying to profit off of somebody's injury. So even if there is damage, there's injury and damage, that still is not evidence showing that the Constitution applies to me just because I'm physically in Arizona.
Right.
So now
That's
again,
true.
but I need to always point out, just because their laws, their rules don't apply to anybody, there's no evidence, doesn't mean that I'm advocating that we hurt other people and not make other people whole. I actually believe in what Justinian wrote, is that the three precepts of the law are live honestly, injure no one, give every man his due. I actually live my life by that, unlike Justinian, who was one of the worst psychopaths in history. I want those three precepts to apply to everybody. So if you've hurt somebody, make them whole. And this is why I don't marginalize a DUI. I don't care that nobody was hurt. Somebody could have died. It's the same thing as saying, well, if I just fire my gun into the desert, willy-nilly, the fact that it doesn't hit anybody or hit anyone's property doesn't mean I still put people in danger, and that's unethical and immoral behavior, and it should not be tolerated. So I don't always it's not always appropriate to say that, well, no one got hurt. I always condemn that behavior, and I say very emphatically, the best way to avoid a DUI is to never drink, period. It's self-destructive behavior, and you shouldn't drink. So I don't buy that it's just a DUI line, but I want everyone to understand that.
How would you handle something like that, where it's like, and I know this is more like a theoretical kind of question, but what's the best way to handle that? That's going to happen.
Well, for one, I think someone like that should be publicly exposed. Just like when I put Wesley Serra's face on Facebook and on Twitter and whatnot. I want people to know what he did, and I take his actual words and use it against him. Okay, I don't do like what he does and just lie. But when you've got evidence, so if you've got somebody who's engaged in very dangerous behavior, they should be outed, and they should be ostracized to a degree until they stop that behavior. No, DUI, there is absolutely no moral justification or ethical justification for a DUI. It doesn't matter if you don't hurt anybody. The fact is you could destroy a family. I know somebody who, yeah, I have a personal interest, of course, as most of us do, because DUIs wind up, drunk drivers wind up killing so many people. I had a friend of mine die at 18 years old because the idiot who was driving the car, they were both drunk. So just a bad move. Bad move. But I do congratulate you on this. I think it's great. I would say that circumstantially, I think it points pretty heavily in favor of they didn't have the evidence. They didn't want to be bothered. And the thing is, if the file had the evidence like it was supposed to, they would have just taken you to trial. Just take the man to trial. We have people, Terry in Michigan is going in front of Dick Noble again soon, up there in the Big D. So they prosecute people all the time, even though 90% are pled out. So if he had the evidence in the file, he would have just presented it and said, well, dude, all right, well, I have no problem prosecuting you. This is going to be the easiest 15 minutes of my career. But they don't, because it's too hard. It's a thing we got to realize, Jeremy.
A lot of my friends, they would say, and even family members, replied, I was so happy when I got out of court, that one, that it was over, and two, that I wouldn't say I won, but I didn't lose. It was dismissed. So
yeah.
In a sense, I won. A real win would be me suing the cop and me changing the community and the minds of the cops in Sandy Springs to understand, hey, wait, we're taking an oath to uphold the Georgia Constitution, and the very first line of it we're breaking every time we stop somebody for something that's nonviolent or non-harmful or injurious or even like you said, okay, drunk driving or anything that's just ridiculous like that. But I would say 90+% of things are just behavior control. At least the things that I'm hearing from people in the court and why they're there,
Oh, no doubt.
Just behavior control.
Well, it's raising revenue through behavior control. All they're doing is raising revenue. And you can say, but the people want these services. True. And people who want services will pay for them. And they do. Right. It's just you don't...
So a lot of people will say, like my family and friends, they would say, well, maybe they just didn't want, maybe they had jurisdiction, they just didn't want to bother with you, because they had so many other people. But they were too busy, or it's like they're making excuses. I'm like, no, that's not, that's not it. They would, anyway.
Well, we have to, look, we can't be like the critics, though, Jeremy. We can't just slam the door shut on any other plausible explanation. It's very possible that he considered you just too much work. And I temper that with, of course. And I think that's probably what happened. But I think the reason why he considered you so much work was because you were asking for things that he could not provide. Again, why is it so difficult and why are you considered so much trouble if the evidence is already in the file? So, yes, you are too much trouble. We are too much trouble to them because they can't make it look good. They can't present what they're supposed to present, so they throw it out. I'll be the first to say that I believe they threw it out because you were too much trouble because you were challenging them and putting them up against the wall that they couldn't. He wasn't arrogant enough to say to you, "I don't have to prove that." Just like this what's her name from last week, Castillo, Tiffany Castillo. You just happen to get a guy who's just pushing a pencil and doing a job and he's not emotionally attached to it. He wasn't so arrogant to turn around and make an excuse. He wasn't. So, yeah, you were too much trouble because he couldn't provide the evidence you were asking for. So it wasn't a slam dunk prosecution.
If the charges were a little bit more viewed as serious, maybe DUI or somebody was physically hurt, then they would have more incentive.
Well, I was going to actually say, because I wrote it down here, that this idea that it's too much trouble to prosecute, this is a traffic case. All they're going to do is call the police officer as a witness to testify against you. It's going to be 15 minutes long, if that. They're not putting you on trial for a DUI where you have actual, forensics. They're not. This isn't a rape where it's just too much trouble. It's a minor traffic. And yeah, you actually challenge them. I don't buy this idea that if anyone challenges them, they'll throw it out, which is why I asked you that question earlier with the people who pled not guilty and were going to take it to trial. They didn't just throw their hands up and say, whoa, too much trouble here. So I think here the strongest argument or conclusion that we have is that, yes, you presented a very difficult position for this attorney to be in, and it was easier to just throw it away because he could not make his case. Not because he could and didn't want to, because he couldn't.
I wonder if it would have been any different had I just stood up and said here and sat back down. Is it something psychological? Maybe also, I suspect it may be a benefit to stand up and show strength in the very beginning when you're like, I'm here to challenge jurisdiction, and probably say it differently like you were speaking about earlier.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with it because you're throwing a monkey wrench in the works. You are making their jobs more difficult. Again, it's not difficult for them to prosecute a traffic case, especially when you compare it to a real crime. It's very easy to prosecute a traffic case. It's just going through the motions and whatnot. So, yeah, that's why I say, tell them right off the bat, I am going to fight you tooth and nail every step of the way. I mean, every step of the way. And if I have to do an interlocutory appeal, I'm going to do it. This is a matter of principle, and I will fight you every single step of the way, and I will object to everything you do. That's why we do that. We make it so they can't make it look good, and we want them to just throw their hands up and forget this. I can prosecute 5,000 people without this many objections. So, hey, I do appreciate it, and I'll get that posted again because you wanted. I did redact your name. Well, we know Jeremy, but we don't have I redacted the rest of your name. And I'll get that posted hopefully by tomorrow.
Cool.
Yeah, and I appreciate
Marc.
you sending me that.
Thanks for all you do.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks for calling into the show and giving us a report.
All right.
I appreciate it. It's Jeremy in Atlanta, Georgia. Hotlanta, Georgia there. I really do appreciate that. And again, we do hold out that there are other plausible, rational explanations for why the tickets were thrown out. Criminal traffic tickets were thrown out against Jeremy. However, you got to look at the circumstantial evidence. You got to look at a bigger picture and not just cherry pick certain things. Well, I know a lawyer, a prosecutor, and he just didn't want to bother with these so that means they all are like that. No, because as he reported, there was over 100 people in there, and a small percentage of them also were fighting it. Their tickets weren't thrown out. If the evidence was in the file like it's supposed to be, they just present it and go through a slam dunk prosecution. Prosecutors live by conviction, not by throwing their hands up and not getting a conviction. They want to show they actually have a trial conviction, not just a plea, 90% pleas, but that they actually are good attorneys and are tough on crime and whatnot. And yeah, they've won a lot of trials, jury and bench trials, not just throwing their hands up every time somebody files a motion to dismiss. It's ridiculous. If that was the case, all you would have to do is file some nonsensical motion and you stand a really good chance of getting it thrown out, right? According to some people. But in the remaining time that I got left over here, holy crap, I got to see what I can do about. It's a lot of editing, and that's why I haven't posted this yet. But I had quite a phone call with 3 people with the Franchise Tax Board in California. For those who aren't aware, the Franchise Tax Board is the California state government's taxing arm. And they're the ones who collect the income tax and state taxes. You either do it or you go to jail. They're also the ones that are making the threats to companies that if you do not give us these financial reports, then we'll put you in jail. We will shut your business down and put you in jail. I actually had someone contradict themselves. This is the thing. When you are asking these tax agents or any of these bureaucrats questions regarding their position, and it's getting real. You're starting to get closer to where they're going to have to contradict themselves because they're actually answering questions. They're going to actually start contradicting themselves to keep from contradicting themselves. I know. I follow me here. I'm going somewhere with this because what it comes down to, the Franchise Tax Board's entire position, which they don't want to admit, is the evidence proving that their rules apply to you is that they forced a company to make a financial report to them. I'm not making this up. Call them. They'll actually tell you. So I'm working with somebody, and there was no return filed, and they're saying that the laws do apply. Well, where's your evidence the laws apply? And they said, well, it's the reported income. I said, you're saying the reported income from the employer? Yes. And isn't it accurate that reported income, because they do agree that if the report was made in error, they'll drop it. Yeah, I know, they'll contradict themselves later, but we use it against them. So that's why sometimes we focus on the report being in error. So they agree that it's compulsory. Okay, so you agree that the employer is only doing this because you forced them to. Oh, nobody forced them to. You said it was compulsory. Doesn't compulsory mean that they have no choice? Well, yeah, they're required to. They're compelled to do it by you, right? So if they don't do this, you have a threat that you will prosecute them and maybe put them in jail and shut down their business, right? No, that's not true. Did they go and did they actually repeal Section 19701 of your Revenue and Taxation Code? Remember the Revenue and Taxation Code that you revere like it was given to you by the hand of Odin himself? The law? Well, I'm not familiar with it. I am. So why don't you take a second here, look up Section 19701 and take a look. I said, because I can guarantee you that the only reason why you got that report is because you have a constant threat of jail being held over this company's head. This is the level of mentality you have to deal with. They will say they will agree it's compulsory and then turn around and say nobody forced them. Why? Because when you put it in terms like that they were forced to do it, it doesn't sound even as nice as compulsory. Because now you're getting really down to the nitty-gritty of it. So then you can actually say to them, which I did. So your position is this. Your rules apply to me because you forced this company to make a report on the threat of jail. Now, that's exactly what they're doing, right? Can anyone possibly dispute those facts with me? Really? There's no rational dispute to those facts. You either provide the documents or you get prosecuted and you go to jail. And it doesn't matter if they carry the threat out or not. The threat is what makes the crime. Has anyone ever heard of the word assault? Ay. So you get to this end position with them, and I've walked them through this process. And this is a thing that's so important. When they get upset with you, or me rather, or you if you're asking these questions, because the Socratic method can be brutal, especially if you're a con man and this is being done publicly. Well, the evidence proving that our laws apply to you, Mark, is all the other people we prosecuted and put in that dark prison. Give me a break with this crap. That's a Harvard law education. The evidence is we put other people in prison. Holy crap. That doesn't even qualify under legal logic. Maybe the philosophy of the insane. So you back them into a corner with their own damn statements. And you ask them point blank, how the hell does the financial report prove your Constitution applies to me? Can you explain that to me? And this is what they say. That is a legal issue, and I can't answer. That was 20 minutes because it took so long to get certain admissions. Because you ask them a question and they just don't answer. So they give you all this, well, we got the financial report and we've got, yeah, could you just answer the question, yes or no? So I bring them to that point and then they say, that's a legal issue, I can't answer. So really, so let me ask you questions because you're not qualified? You're not qualified to answer that question? Because wouldn't that so if you're not qualified to answer that question, are you qualified to say that your laws apply to me in the first place? So I go through the same kind of thing with another agent who's supposed to be a supervisor. And they tell me that the same thing. I bring them right to that same point. Please explain to me how a compulsory report from a third party proves your Constitution applies to me. This is what's so great about just asking these questions. Again, all we're trying to do is get them to verify a claim they are making. We're not pulling anything out of thin air. We're just going based on their statements. And she tells me, well, I asked her, who down there is qualified to support this? She tells me I have to go to the IRS. This is where a laugh track will come in handy on the show. I said, again, you don't make statements. It's devastating to just ask questions, leading questions. Why would I have to ask the IRS? Are they the ones who determined for you that your laws apply to me and that I was obligated to file a return? Listen to that question. She has already told me earlier in the conversation, all three of them had already told me. The Franchise Tax Board determined there was an obligation. They determined they had jurisdiction. So she's lying to me or contradicting herself, or being nice, to say that I have to go to the IRS. Why do I have to go to the IRS when the IRS didn't make the claim? Again, you want to ask a leading question. I think it's better. What I had asked, well, I already said it. Are you saying that the IRS made the determination for you? Well, no. Then why would I have to talk to them? Did the federal government, did the Internal Revenue Service determine that your laws, that California state law applied? Did they do that for you? No. Why would I have to go to them for evidence to support your claim? Because people who do business at the barrel of a gun don't need evidence. Oh, yeah. She tried to throw out the I can't advise you line, too. So it's just similar to like what Tiffany Castillo did last week. Yeah, because asking for evidence is somehow asking for legal advice. There's that phrase, legal advice, again. I don't think it means what you think it does. So I'll do what I can to get those 3 calls cut up and posted. But it is a lot of work involved because they put me on hold and they just don't answer the question. And I know that's instructive, but I don't need to have all 3 of the women I spoke to because it's repeating. So I'll do my best to get at least some of those calls posted. This is what you can expect because it's so effective to just ask questions. And don't listen to people that, well, Marc isn't just asking questions. He's arguing philosophy. No. Even if there was somebody nutrition-wise that was making nutritional claims, if they're making the claim, you just ask questions to bring out any contradictions to see if they are actually making valid arguments, presenting valid conclusions. The fact that I'm asking questions and only accepting a responsive answer does not change the nature of what I'm saying. It doesn't create an argument out of it. That's why we can always say to them, to these agents, so you're raising a frivolous argument. Really? Can you quote it for me? Go ahead. Quote me. What argument am I making? The only thing they can do is turn around and say, well, you're saying the laws don't apply. That's called straw man. No, get the position correct. If you're going to claim I'm arguing, get what I'm saying correct. I'm saying you don't have any evidence to support your claim. You don't have any evidence. Don't reframe my position so that you can defeat it easy. Dishonest. Just like the cherry picking I discussed before. Very, very, very dishonest, but that's what you got to expect from these people. Am I right? I'm at the end of the time here. I'm hoping that Terry's going to be doing some role-playing in the Skype chat. If you need to do that, go to markstevens.net and hit the link for the Skype chat. It's under upcoming events, and it'll bring you right there. So Terry is an old hand at this, but hey, if I was going into court this week, I would be doing the role-playing also. So hopefully Terry is going to be able to do that. Hopefully, maybe we can get some media reps. And speaking of media reps, go to markstevens.net. Scar is going to court again next month in Tucson, so he's got all the information in the forum about having a media rep. So I probably can't do it. In fact, I know I can't do it. But if you are in the area, if you're in Arizona, if you can do that, show some support, that would be great. I'm going to do what I can to make some calls to some of the local bureaucrats regarding that. And hopefully get some good call of shames. But we're out of time here. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Hopefully, it should be the next Wednesday show. Should be on my YouTube channel, No State Project. Should be. And I will be live on Saturday, so I am back live on the Saturday broadcast. So if I missed anybody today, I apologize. Give us a call on the Saturday broadcast. But oh, yeah, I want to, again, thank Matthew and everyone who helps supports the show, especially Matthew, because he's got that smoking computer that he helped provide, and Calvin for putting it together. That's great. So hopefully for Wednesday, it should be, we'll be doing an HD stream on the YouTube channel. Again, my name is Marc Stevens. The website is markstevens.net. If you disagree with what I presented here on episode 31 of the No State Project commercial free, give us a call during the live broadcast. Or, post it on the forum, markstevens.net forum, and show me where I was wrong in my analysis and something that I got wrong, because, hey, you have to adopt your belief to the data, especially, when you have a pretty complete picture. So if you disagree with something, give us a call here on the big show. But till Saturday when we are back live again, salud.